My 6-year-old son grabbed my arm, his voice a panicked whisper. "Daddy, we need to hide. They're coming tonight." Confused, I asked what was wrong. He was trembling. "I saw them in Mom's phone," he said. A cold dread washed over me. My wife, Vanessa, had just left for a supposed girls' trip. I checked the security cameras, a gut feeling telling me something was terribly wrong. Then I grabbed my gun. I turned to get the kids, and that's when the front door burst open. Russell Bennett stared at his son, Noah. The boy's eyes were wide with terror, his small fingers digging into Russell's forearm. "Daddy, we need to hide now," Noah whispered, his voice trembling. Russell knelt down. "What's wrong, buddy?" "They're coming tonight. I saw them in Mom's phone." A cold feeling settled in Russell's gut. Vanessa had been gone for only 3 hours, her Louis Vuitton luggage packed for a spa getaway with friends. Their 15th anniversary was 2 weeks away. "Show me what you saw," Russell said, keeping his voice steady. Noah led him to the master bedroom where Vanessa had left her old phone, the one she claimed was broken. Noah knew the passcode, Vanessa's birth year. "I wanted to play games," the boy explained, "but then these messages kept coming." Russell scrolled through a dozen texts between Vanessa and a contact saved as work client. The most recent message, read, "House empty tonight. Russell has no idea. The kid will be asleep by 9. Russell's jaw clenched. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built on what he thought was solid ground. He'd built his construction business from nothing, making them wealthy. The 5-bedroom house, the private schools, the vacations, all while Vanessa's interior design career never quite took off, despite his connections and financial support. "Noah, go get your sister. Tell her we're playing a special game tonight." 8-year-old Lily appeared moments later, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy, what's happening?" "We're playing spies tonight," Russell said, forcing a smile. "I need you both to pack a small bag with your favorite things, just like we practiced for emergency drills, remember?" As the children gathered their things, Russell checked the security cameras on his phone. The property was quiet. The manicured lawn, the 3-car garage, the glimmering infinity pool. Nothing out of place. Yet. Russell went to his office and pulled his Glock 19 from a hidden safe behind a painting, a wedding gift from his father-in-law. He hadn't touched it in years, but muscle memory took over as he checked the magazine and chambered around. His mind flashed back to his childhood. The trailer park in rural Pennsylvania, the constant moving whenever bill collectors came knocking, his mother's string of abusive boyfriends. He had clawed his way out, building his company as proof that determination could overcome anything. He had met Vanessa Pearson at a charity gala. Her family had old money and connections, and he was dazzled. She represented everything he had fought for: class, stability, legitimacy. Her father, State Senator Dale Pearson, had made it clear Russell wasn't good enough, but Vanessa had defied her family to marry him, or so he'd thought. He called his most trusted employee and friend, Miguel Sanchez. "Boss, everything okay?" Miguel answered on the first ring. "I need a favor, no questions. Can you meet me at the cabin in an hour and bring that security specialist you mentioned, the one who doesn't ask questions?" "On it. Everything all right with Vanessa and the kids?" Russell's voice hardened. "Just meet me there." After gathering the children and their bags, Russell led them to the garage. As they climbed into his Range Rover, he heard the sound of tires on gravel. Headlights swept across the driveway. "Down," he instructed the children, who ducked below the windows. Through the security feed on his phone, Russell watched a black Audi, not Vanessa's, pull up. A tall, athletic man in an expensive suit stepped out. Russell recognized him immediately. District Attorney Anthony Walsh, the rising political star, who had been a guest at their dinner parties, the man Vanessa had introduced as an old family friend. Russell's finger hovered over the garage door opener. He could confront them now with his gun and his rage, but Noah's frightened face in the rearview mirror reminded him of what was truly at stake. Instead, he backed the Range Rover out through the side garage door, lights off, and drove away. As they turned onto the main road, a second car passed them, Vanessa's white Mercedes. "Is that Mommy?" Lily asked, peering through the window. "Yes, sweetheart," Russell replied, his voice dangerously calm. "But we're still playing our spy game, so we can't let her see us." His children didn't need to witness what came next, but he wouldn't let this betrayal stand. Russell Bennett had fought too hard for everything he had, and he never forgot those who betrayed him. The Bennett family cabin sat on 20 acres of forested land by Lake Chadsworth, 2 hours from the city. Russell had purchased it 5 years ago as an investment, though Vanessa had shown little interest in roughing it, even in a 3,500-square-foot luxury cabin. Miguel was waiting when they arrived, along with a short, unremarkable man with wire-rimmed glasses who introduced himself simply as Pike. "The kids can sleep in the loft," Russell said after brief introductions. "I've got Netflix on the TV up there." Once Noah and Lily were settled with blankets and cartoons, Russell led the men to the living area. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the moonlit lake, but Russell drew the blinds before speaking. "I need information," he said, pouring 3 glasses of bourbon. "Everything on District Attorney Anthony Walsh and his connection to my wife. Timeline for this: yesterday." While Pike began his work, Russell explained the situation to Miguel, who had been with him since their first remodeling job. "Walsh has political ambitions beyond DA," Miguel noted. "Word is he's being groomed for a gubernatorial run with backing from the Pearsons. My in-laws," Russell finished. "They never thought I was good enough for their daughter. 15 years, and Dale still introduces me as Vanessa's husband at their country club gatherings." "What's your play here, boss?" Miguel asked. Russell stared into his bourbon. "I need to understand what I'm dealing with first, but I won't lose my children, and I won't be made a fool of." Pike worked through the night. By morning, they had a clearer picture, and it was uglier than Russell had imagined. Walsh and Vanessa's relationship wasn't new. Digital forensics showed communication stretching back 18 months, coinciding with Walsh's appointment as district attorney. But more concerning were the other connections Pike uncovered: financial transfers from Senator Pearson to offshore accounts linked to shell companies that had recently bid against Bennett Construction for major government contracts. "They're not just sleeping together," Russell realized. "They're trying to dismantle everything I've built." The pieces fell into place: the unexplained contract losses, the sudden regulatory hurdles, the routine audit from the state attorney's office. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed their marriage, she'd been actively undermining his livelihood. "Your wife accessed your home office safe twice last month," Pike noted, showing security footage Russell hadn't known existed. "And there's this." He played a recording of Vanessa's voice. "Daddy's convinced the rezoning will go through next month. Once Bennett Construction secures the River District contract, you'll have everything you need." Russell's hands tightened around his glass. "Boss, if they're using your company to build evidence for some kind of case—" "This isn't about business," Russell interrupted. "This is personal. Walsh wants my position, my reputation, and my wife, and my father-in-law is finally executing his plan to remove the embarrassment from his daughter's life." Russell spent the morning making calls, moving assets, and initiating contingency plans he'd created years ago, but hoped never to use. By afternoon, he had a clearer understanding of the trap being set for him. That evening, as the children played, by the lake under Miguel's watchful eye, Russell received the call he'd been expecting. Vanessa's name flashed on his phone. "Where are you?" she demanded, her voice a mix of anger and fear. "And where are my children?" "My children," Russell noted. "Not our children. We decided to take a camping trip," he replied evenly. "Father-child, bonding." "You need to come home now," Vanessa insisted. "There's a situation with the River District project. Anthony says—" "Anthony?" Russell interrupted. "You mean District Attorney Walsh?" A moment of silence confirmed everything. "Russell, please." Her voice softened into the tone she used when trying to manipulate him. "Whatever you think you know—" "I know enough," he said. "Tell Walsh and your father that their plan has a problem. Me." He ended the call and turned to Pike, who had been recording and analyzing the conversation. "She's at your house with Walsh and 2 others, Pike confirmed, showing satellite imagery on his laptop. "And they're panicking." Russell nodded. "Good. Phase 1 complete." "What's Phase 2? Miguel asked. Russell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They want to use my family against me. Let's see how they like it when I use their playbook. 3 days passed at the cabin. Russell maintained a communications blackout, allowing Vanessa to stew in uncertainty while he built his counteroffensive. The children, told they were on a surprise vacation, enjoyed the lake and forest, oblivious to the storm gathering around their family. On the 4th morning, Russell received confirmation that his first moves had landed. His attorney, Charlotte Winters, a shark in designer clothing, texted a single message. Papers filed. Judge Holden assigned. Emergency hearing granted for Friday. Russell had filed for divorce and emergency custody of the children, citing abandonment and moral character concerns. Judge Holden was known for his traditional family values and distrust of political influence, a perfect combination given Walsh's involvement and Senator Pearson's potential interference. Your wife has made 17 attempts to access your company servers, Pike reported, showing a digital activity log, and there's been unusual activity at your residential property. Security footage showed men in unmarked vans removing items from Russell's home office. Walsh appeared in several frames, directing the operation, while Vanessa paced in the background. They're getting desperate, Russell observed, which means they're getting careless. A call from an unknown number interrupted them. Russell answered, on speaker. Bennett. His voice was ice. Mr. Bennett, this is Special Agent Teresa Delgado with the FBI's Public Corruption Division. The woman's voice was professional, but carried an edge of urgency. We need to speak with you regarding an ongoing investigation. Russell exchanged glances with Pike, who was already tracing the call. He nodded confirmation. Interesting timing, Agent Delgado. I assume District Attorney Walsh is involved in this investigation? A moment of silence. Sir, I'm not at liberty to discuss. Let me save us both some time, Russell interrupted. Walsh is using federal resources to pursue a personal vendetta. You might want to verify your information before you become part of a malicious prosecution. Mr. Bennett, we have documentation suggesting financial irregularities in several government contracts awarded to Bennett Construction. Fabricated documentation, Russell corrected. Check the metadata on those files and then ask yourself why a state DA is pushing a federal investigation without going through proper channels. Another pause. How did you know? I'll be happy to meet with you, Agent Delgado, Russell said, but only with my attorney present, and after you've had a chance to verify that your evidence hasn't been tampered with. I suggest you look into who accessed those files and when. After ending the call, Russell turned to Miguel. They're accelerating their timeline. We need to do the same. The next day, Russell left the children with Miguel at the cabin and drove to meet Charlotte at her office. The elegant attorney greeted him with a grim smile. They're moving faster than anticipated, she said, guiding him to a conference room where documents were spread across the table. Walsh has convinced a grand jury to consider indictments, and your father-in-law has called in favors to expedite matters. What about our countermeasures? Charlotte's smile turned predatory. Already in motion. Your ex-wife-to-be doesn't realize you've been recording everything in your home for the past 5 years, including her conversations with Walsh about using your marriage to gain access to your business. Russell had installed a comprehensive security system after a break-in attempt 3 years earlier. Every room, even his home office, had been wired for sound and video, with data backing up to servers only he could access. And the offshore accounts? He asked. Trace back to Senator Pearson. His aide was cooperative when presented with certain evidence. Russell nodded. The senator's longtime assistant had a weakness for gambling and young men, information Russell had acquired, but never used until now. What about the children? This was his primary concern. Judge Holden has reviewed the evidence of your wife's abandonment and her inappropriate relationship with Walsh. Given the circumstances, he's inclined to grant you temporary full custody pending the final hearing. That evening, as Russell prepared to return to the cabin, Charlotte handed him a sealed envelope. This arrived for you. Courier wouldn't leave it with anyone else. Inside was a single photograph showing Vanessa, Walsh, and Senator Pearson in what appeared to be a hotel conference room surrounded by documents. A note on the back read, "Some of us remember our loyalties. Not all Pearson support this vendetta. Friday, 9 p.m., Lakeside Pavilion." Russell recognized the handwriting. Vanessa's younger brother, Thomas Pearson, the family disappointment, who had rejected the political path to become an artist. Thomas and Russell had always gotten along, united in their status as outsiders in the Pearson dynasty. As Russell drove back to the cabin, his phone rang. Vanessa again. "We need to talk," she said, her voice strained. "For the children's sake." "We'll talk on Friday," Russell replied. "In court." "This isn't what you think, Russell. You're making a terrible mistake." "No, Vanessa. The mistake was yours. You chose the wrong man to betray." That night, as the Yasol children slept, Russell finalized his plans with Miguel and Pike. The information Thomas had promised could be the final piece they needed. "What if it's a trap?" Miguel asked. Russell checked his gun. "Then we'll be ready for that too." Friday arrived with a sense of inevitability. After the court hearing, where Judge Holden granted Russell temporary custody and froze several contested assets, much to the visible shock of Walsh, who attended as an observer, Russell prepared for his meeting with Thomas. "Stay with the children," he instructed Miguel. "If I don't call by midnight, execute the contingency plan." The lakeside pavilion was deserted when Russell arrived, mist rising from the water. Thomas emerged from the shadows, looking nothing like the carefree artist Russell remembered. His face was drawn, worried. "They're planning to have you arrested Monday morning," Thomas said without preamble. "Walsh has manufactured evidence of bid rigging and bribery. Dad's calling in every favor he has." "Why are you telling me this?" Russell asked. "They're your family." Thomas met his gaze. "Vanessa crossed a line. What they're doing isn't justice, it's persecution. And," he hesitated, "those kids love you. You're a good father." He handed Russell a USB drive. "Everything's here. The real conversations, the actual financial transactions. Walsh has been using Dad's connections to eliminate business rivals for years. You're just the latest target." As they talked, Russell noticed movement at the edge of the pavilion. "We're not alone," he whispered. Thomas's eyes widened. "I swear I didn't—" The crack of a gunshot interrupted him. Thomas clutched his chest, red blossoming on his shirt as Russell dove for cover. From his position behind a stone column, Russell saw 4 men advancing, weapons drawn. This wasn't law enforcement. No announcements, no badges. This was an execution. Russell drew his gun and returned fire, catching one attacker in the shoulder. He grabbed the wounded Thomas and retreated toward the water, where he had docked a small boat as a secondary escape route. "Stay with me," Russell urged as he helped Thomas into the boat. "Who sent them?" Thomas coughed, blood speckling his lips. "Not Vanessa. She doesn't know how far they're willing to go." As Russell started the motor and sped away, more shots followed them across the water. The pavilion receded into darkness, but Russell knew this was just the beginning. The real war was about to begin. The safe house on the outskirts of town had once been a foreclosure property that Russell's company renovated and kept off the books. It was modest, but secure and untraceable. Thomas Pearson lay on a bed in the spare room, his breathing shallow. The bullet had missed his heart, but punctured his lung. Russell's contact, a former combat medic who now worked for cash and discretion, had stabilized him, but warned that Thomas needed a hospital. "He won't make it another day without proper medical care," the medic said, packing his supplies. Russell pressed a thick envelope of cash into the man's hand. "Can you arrange transport somewhere they won't ask questions or report to the authorities?" The medic hesitated, then nodded. "I know a place. Private clinic. Runs a cash-only operation for people who need to stay under the radar. But it'll cost you." "Money isn't a problem." After the medic left, Russell sat beside Thomas, who drifted in and out of consciousness. "Why did you really help me?" Russell asked during one of Thomas's lucid moments. Thomas's pale face contorted in pain as he shifted. "Lily has my eyes. Pearson eyes." He coughed. "Did you ever wonder why?" The implication hit Russell like a physical blow. He stared at his brother-in-law, understanding dawning in his expression. "Lily is my daughter," Thomas confirmed weakly. "One night, years ago, Vanessa was angry at you, came to my studio, said she wanted to hurt you where it would matter most." Russell's mind raced back 8 years to the major contract in Dallas where he had been gone for weeks. Vanessa had been distant upon his return, but he attributed it to the stress of his absence. Why tell me now? Because Lily deserves better than Vanessa. Thomas gripped Russell's wrist with surprising strength. And you've been a real father to her. Better than I could be. The revelation should have destroyed Russell. Instead, it crystallized something in him. Lily was his daughter in every way that mattered. Blood was irrelevant. He had raised her, loved her, shaped her life, just as his own stepfather had done for him. Does Walsh know? Russell asked. Thomas shook his head. No one knows, except Vanessa and me, and now you. Before Russell could respond, his phone vibrated with a text from Pike. FBI at primary residence. Walsh present with warrant. Simultaneously, a call came in from Miguel. Boss, we've got trouble. Someone tracked your phone. There's movement on the access road to the cabin. Russell's mind shifted into tactical mode. Get the children out. Emergency extraction plan now. He turned back to Thomas. I'll have someone move you to the clinic within the hour. This location may be compromised. Thomas grabbed his arm again. The USB? It has everything. But Walsh has a contact in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Lawrence Drake. He's the one pushing the federal case. Russell nodded. Rest. I'll handle it. After making arrangements for Thomas, Russell destroyed his phone and switched to one of several burner phones he kept ready. The attack at the pavilion had escalated matters beyond what he'd anticipated. This wasn't just about destroying his reputation. They were trying to eliminate him entirely. 2 hours later, Miguel arrived at a second safe house with Noah and Lily, both sleepy and confused. Where are we, Daddy? Lily asked, her Pearson eyes, Russell now realized, heavy with interrupted sleep. Another part of our adventure, Russell assured her, pushing aside the turmoil Thomas's revelation had created. You're both being very brave. Once the children were settled, Miguel updated Russell. They came in force. 4 SUVs, multiple men. Not police, private security professionals. They searched the cabin but cleared out when they found it empty. And the tracker? Left it on a truck heading north. Should buy us some time. Russell nodded. Did Pike secure the evidence from my home server before they executed the warrant? Everything's safe, but they're freezing your accounts, business and personal. Charlotte's fighting it, but it doesn't matter, Russell interrupted. I prepared for this. He had maintained emergency funds in gold, crypto, and cash for years, a habit from his insecure childhood that Vanessa had mocked as paranoid. What about the children's documents? Got them from the secure storage unit. Passports, birth certificates, everything. Russell checked his watch. Nearly midnight. We move at dawn. I need you to deliver something to Agent Delgado at the FBI. You trust her? No, but I trust her ambition. Pike's background check shows she's been passed over for promotion twice in favor of less qualified male agents with better connections. She'll use this case to advance if she sees a clear winner. Russell spent the night preparing 2 packages. The first contained a carefully curated selection of evidence from Thomas's USB drive, enough to raise serious questions about Walsh and Senator Pearson, but not enough to resolve the case without Russell's cooperation. The second package, for Charlotte, contained irrefutable evidence of the conspiracy against him, including recordings of Vanessa and Walsh discussing their plans to use the children as leverage. At 5 a.m., as Miguel left to deliver the FBI package, Russell received a call from the private clinic. Thomas had developed complications during the night. He was asking for Russell. By the time Russell arrived, Thomas was barely conscious, his skin gray beneath the oxygen mask. Did you bring it? Thomas whispered when they were alone. Russell produced the item Thomas had requested during their brief phone conversation. A voice recorder. I need to make a statement. For the next 20 minutes, Thomas detailed everything. The conspiracy between Walsh and Senator Pearson, the attack at the pavilion, and the truth about Lily's parentage. His voice grew weaker, but his determination never wavered. I know my father, Thomas rasped. He won't stop until Russell is destroyed or dead. Anthony Walsh is the same. They're cut from the same cloth. Power is all that matters to them. When he finished, Thomas removed the oxygen mask, despite Russell's protests. One more thing. My apartment? There's a safe behind the Jackson Pollock knockoff. Combination is Lily's birthday. Everything else you need is there. Thomas's monitor began to alarm. The last words he spoke were, "Protect her, Russell. Protect them both." Thomas Pearson died at 6:42 a.m. The doctors cited complications from his gunshot wound, but Russell suspected the truth was more sinister. Someone had gotten to him. As Russell left the clinic, his burner phone rang. It was Charlotte. "They've issued a warrant for your arrest," she said without preamble. "Charges include fraud, racketeering, and now obstruction of justice. They're claiming you've kidnapped the children. Have they frozen the offshore accounts?" "Not yet. Your contingency planning is holding for now." "What about Judge Holden?" "They've moved for a different judge, claiming bias. Hearing scheduled for Monday." Russell processed this. "And Vanessa?" Charlotte's voice hardened. "Playing the devastated mother for the press, Walsh at her side as family friend and legal advisor. Senator Pearson is calling for a multi-agency task force to find you and the children. Make sure the custody recordings reach Judge Holden's chambers directly," Russell instructed. "And file an emergency motion citing threats to the children's safety. Use the pavilion shooting as evidence." After ending the call, Russell drove to Thomas's apartment. He quickly located the safe. Inside was another USB drive, a handwritten journal, and legal documents, including a paternity test confirming Thomas as Lily's biological father, and a will naming Russell as the guardian of Thomas's daughter, Lily Bennett, in the event of his death. Thomas had prepared for this. He had known the risks. As Russell gathered the materials, his burner phone rang again. This time, it was Pike. "You need to see something," the security specialist said, sending a video link. The footage showed a press conference. Vanessa stood at a podium, tear-streaked but composed, with Walsh and Senator Pearson flanking her. "I fear for my children's safety," she was saying, her voice breaking convincingly. "My husband has become increasingly paranoid and volatile. Now he's taken my babies. Please, Russell, if you're watching this, bring Noah and Lily home. They need their mother." Russell watched, cold fury building. Walsh stepped forward. "We have reason to believe Mr. Bennett may be attempting to flee the country with the children," the DA announced. "All airports and border crossings have been alerted. We implore anyone with information to come forward." Senator Pearson spoke next, his patrician features arranged in an expression of concern. "As a father and grandfather, I am devastated by this situation. I am offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to the safe return of my grandchildren." The performance was masterful. They had painted Russell as a dangerous, unstable kidnapper, but they had made one critical mistake. "They don't know Thomas is dead," Russell realized, speaking to Pike. "And they don't know what he told me. It was time to change the game." Russell's next move required precision timing. After arranging secure accommodations for the children with Miguel's sister, a retired teacher who lived off the grid, he prepared to leverage the evidence Thomas had provided. "They're expecting me to run," Russell told Miguel during their encrypted video call. "So instead, I'm going to walk right through the front door." "You realize that's suicide?" Miguel responded, concern evident in his voice. "Not if we control the narrative." Russell's plan involved a dangerous gambit. While Charlotte prepared legal motions, he arranged a meeting with Agent Teresa Delgado. She agreed to meet at a public location of Russell's choosing, a crowded farmer's market. Russell arrived early, positioned lookouts, former military personnel who had worked security for his construction sites, and waited. Delgado came alone, dressed casually, but Russell's people identified her sidearm and the two plainclothes agents maintaining distance. "Bold move, Mr. Bennett," she said, examining a display of organic tomatoes while speaking quietly. "Half the law enforcement in the state is looking for you, yet here you are. Without backup from the local PD or U.S. Marshals," Russell noted. "Interesting choice." Delgado's expression remained neutral. "Let's just say I have questions about how this case landed on my desk. The chain of command was unusual. Walsh bypassed protocols to involve federal authorities, using his connection to Lawrence Drake in the U.S. Attorney's Office." Delgado's slight widening of the eyes confirmed Russell's information. You seem well informed for someone on the run. I'm not on the run, Agent Delgado. I'm protecting my children from the people who tried to kill Thomas Pearson. He handed her a sealed envelope. Digital forensics on the evidence used against me. Note the creation and modification timestamps, all after I filed for divorce. And this, he passed her a thumb drive, is security footage from the Lakeside Pavilion shooting. You'll see 4 professional hitmen targeting both me and Thomas Pearson. Delgado pocketed both items. Why come to me? Because your review of the Westlake Development corruption case last year shows you follow evidence, not politics, and because you've been passed over for advancement twice, despite your superior case closure rate. Now her expression showed genuine surprise. You've done your homework. I've built a successful business in a competitive industry. Research is essential. Russell checked his watch. You have 48 hours to verify what I've given you. After that, alternative arrangements will proceed. Alternative arrangements? Let's just say certain media outlets and congressional oversight committees will receive comprehensive packages. But that would be messier for everyone involved. As Russell turned to leave, Delgado asked, "Where are the children, Mr. Bennett?" "Safe," he replied without turning back, which is more than I could say if they were with their mother. The next phase required Russell to leverage more of his connections. By evening, he had arranged a meeting with Lawrence Drake's former law partner, a man with his own reasons to distrust the ambitious federal prosecutor. Martin Graves welcomed Russell into his home office with a grim expression. "You're taking an enormous risk coming here. No greater than the one you took. When you called me," Russell replied. "Drake is compromised," Graves stated bluntly. "He's been washing money through real estate investments for Walsh and Senator Pearson for years. That's why he jumped to push this case through. He needs to protect himself as much as them." "You can prove this?" Graves slid a file across his desk. "Banking records, property transactions through shell companies, communications. Drake was careless when we were partners. I've kept copies of everything as insurance." "Why help me now?" The older man swirled his scotch. "Drake forced me out of the firm I built by threatening to expose my daughter's addiction issues. He used that to take everything I'd worked for." Personal vendettas made for motivated allies. Russell had learned this lesson early in his career. By midnight, Russell had what he needed, documented evidence of the prosecutor's corruption that would strengthen Agent Delgado's investigation and potentially turn Drake into a cooperating witness against Walsh and Senator Pearson. The following morning brought news that shifted the dynamics further. Thomas Pearson's death had been reported, attributed to a hunting accident, with no mention of gunshot wounds. Senator Pearson announced the tragic news himself, praising his beloved son and using the press conference to renew calls for finding his missing grandchildren. The fabricated story confirmed Russell's suspicions. They were actively covering up the attempted murder at the pavilion, which meant they would go to any length to prevent the truth from emerging. It was time to accelerate his plan. Charlotte arranged an emergency hearing with Judge Holden, closed to the public. When Russell appeared in the judge's chambers with his attorney, the court security officers were prepared, having been briefed personally by the judge. "Mr. Bennett," Judge Holden began gravely, "you understand that there are warrants for your arrest?" "Yes, Your Honor, and I'm prepared to address them after ensuring my children's safety." For the next hour, Russell and Charlotte presented evidence of the conspiracy against him, including Thomas Pearson's recorded deathbed testimony, the financial connections between Walsh, Senator Pearson, and Prosecutor Drake, and the custody documents naming Russell as Lily's legal guardian following Thomas's death. Judge Holden made an uncharacteristically swift decision. "I am extending the emergency custody order and sealing all records in this case, pending investigation of these serious allegations." He fixed Russell with a stern look. "However, Mr. Bennett, you will need to surrender to authorities to address the criminal charges." "I understand, Your Honor. I'm prepared to surrender to the FBI, specifically to Agent Teresa Delgado, once my children are placed in protective custody, beyond the reach of those who would harm them." The judge considered this request. "I will arrange for court-appointed guardians with no connection to any party in this case. The children's location will remain confidential, known only to this court and the appointed guardians." It wasn't ideal, but it was better than the alternative. Russell agreed to the terms. As Russell left the courthouse through a service entrance arranged by the judge, Charlotte's phone rang. Her expression darkened. "They've moved against your company," she reported. "State regulators have suspended all Bennett construction projects. They're executing search warrants at your offices right now." Russell had anticipated this. "Miguel will handle it. The contingency plans are in place." What he hadn't anticipated was the news report that greeted them when they reached Charlotte's car. On her dashboard screen, breaking news showed Vanessa being escorted from her home on a stretcher, apparently sedated, with Walsh grimly informing reporters that the stress of her children's abduction had caused a breakdown requiring hospitalization. "They're setting up an insanity defense for her," Charlotte realized. "If evidence starts pointing to her involvement, they'll claim she was manipulated while mentally vulnerable." Russell watched the performance with cold detachment. "They're adapting. So will we." That evening, after arranging for the children to be transferred to the court-appointed guardians, Russell prepared for the most dangerous part of his plan. He would surrender to Agent Delgado, placing his faith in the evidence he had provided and the additional leverage he had arranged. But first, he had one more card to play. Using a secure line, Russell connected with Maria Pearson, the senator's wife of 40 years. The call was brief but effective. By the following morning, Mrs. Pearson had withdrawn $50 million from family accounts and publicly announced her separation from the senator, citing irreconcilable moral differences. The timing couldn't have been coincidental, nor could the specific amount, exactly matching recent transfers to offshore accounts linked to Walsh and Drake. As Russell prepared to surrender, Miguel called with news from the business front. "They found nothing in the office raids," he reported. "All the documentation was clean, just as you ensured it would be. But they're freezing the company assets anyway." "What about Project Lazarus?" Russell asked, referring to their contingency company. "Fully operational. The key clients have already signed with the new entity. Bennett Construction may be on ice, but Phoenix Development is taking over all essential operations, with the same teams just as you planned." Russell allowed himself a small smile. Years of preparing for worst-case scenarios were finally paying off. "What about our friend in Washington?" he asked. "Congressman Turner received the package. His office confirmed he'll be calling for a special investigation into Walsh and Senator Pearson's activities related to the state contracting process." It was all coming together. But Russell knew the most dangerous moments in any operation were when victory seemed within reach. That was when people grew careless. And Russell Bennett never grew careless. The morning of Russell's planned surrender dawned with unexpected complications. Pike's monitoring of police channels detected unusual activity, multiple tactical teams, mobilizing for a high-risk operation. "They're not waiting for your surrender," Pike warned during their encrypted call. "DEA, local SWAT, even some private contractors. They're setting up for a raid at multiple locations." Russell processed this quickly. "They found one of the safe houses. The timing suggests they have new intelligence. Someone talked." There were few people who knew Russell's contingency locations. Miguel was loyal beyond question. Charlotte was legally bound to confidentiality, and the court-appointed guardians only knew the location where they had collected the children. "Check on the children," Russell instructed, already moving to evacuate his current position. "Make sure the judicial protective order is being enforced." Within minutes, Pike confirmed the children were secure in their court-mandated placement. But the news wasn't entirely positive. "Judge Holden has been temporarily removed from the case," Pike reported. "Administrative reassignment due to case overload. New judge is Franklin Morris." The name triggered immediate alarm. Morris was known to be close to Senator Pearson. "They're making their move," Russell realized. Delgado must have been overruled or sidelined. A call to Charlotte confirmed his suspicions. "DEA claims they received an anonymous tip linking you to money laundering through your construction projects," she reported. "They've convinced a federal judge to issue new search warrants for all known associates and properties." "Anonymous tip," Russell repeated sarcastically. "Walsh is getting desperate." "Russell," Charlotte's voice took on a rare note of personal concern, "they're throwing everything at this. Using multiple agencies means they can claim jurisdictional confusion if anything goes wrong during your apprehension. The implication was clear. This wasn't an arrest operation. It was potentially an elimination. Russell made his decision. Tell Delgado I'm moving up our meeting. Send her the coordinates for location 3, and Charlotte, activate the nuclear option. The nuclear option was Russell's final contingency, a comprehensive data package containing all evidence of corruption, attempted murder, and conspiracy, set to automatically release to major media outlets, oversight committees, and rival political figures if Russell didn't enter a specific code every 24 hours. As Russell navigated to the new meeting location, an abandoned warehouse his company had purchased for redevelopment, Pike provided updates on the tactical team's movements. They were converging on his previous locations, still unaware of his current position. Agent Delgado arrived alone as requested, her government-issue sedan parking discreetly. Russell watched from a security feed as she exited her vehicle, hand near but not on her holstered weapon. Clear, Pike confirmed. But she's wearing a wire. Expected, Russell replied. Let her in. Delgado's expression registered surprise when she found Russell waiting calmly at a table with documents spread before him. You're earlier than planned, she noted, remaining standing. Circumstances changed. Multiple tactical teams are currently raiding locations associated with me. DEA involvement suggests someone's manufacturing drug connections to justify a more aggressive approach. Delgado's face revealed nothing, but she didn't deny his assessment. I was informed of the operation an hour ago. Different task force, separate chain of command. Convenient, Russell observed. Judge Holden's removal and the new raids happening simultaneously suggest coordination at a high level. Why call me here, Bennett, if you know about the operations? You know I can't stop them. Russell pushed a file toward her. Thomas Pearson's paternity test, confirming he's Lily's biological father, his legal will, naming me as her guardian, and, most importantly, his detailed testimony about the conspiracy between Walsh, Senator Pearson, and Lawrence Drake. Delgado scanned the documents, her professional composure slipping momentarily. This changes the custody angle, but not the financial crimes you're charged with. Check the last file, Russell directed. Complete banking records showing how Drake laundered money through real estate transactions for Walsh and Pearson, the same pattern they tried to fabricate against me. As Delgado reviewed the evidence, her phone buzzed repeatedly. She checked it with growing concern. Your tactical teams hit empty locations, Russell surmised. Now they're wondering where their prey disappeared to. This isn't a game, Bennett. People could get hurt if this escalates. It stopped being a game when they tried to kill Thomas Pearson and me at the pavilion. Russell leaned forward. You have a choice, Agent Delgado. Follow the actual evidence where it leads, or become part of a corrupt prosecution that's rapidly falling apart. Delgado studied him for a long moment. If I take you in now, I can guarantee your safety during processing. Not good enough. I need written assurance of protective custody, separate from local facilities where Walsh has influence, and I need confirmation that the children remain under judicial protection, with their location undisclosed. Before Delgado could respond, her phone rang again. This time she answered on speaker. Delgado, agent. This is Director Kaplan. Your location has been identified. Stand down and withdraw. Tactical teams are en route to your position. Russell and Delgado locked eyes across the table. The director's order confirmed everything. The operation wasn't about lawful arrest, but ensuring Russell couldn't present his evidence. Delgado made her decision. Sir, I'm with the subject now. He's surrendering peacefully with significant counter-evidence. Request permission to... That was not your assignment, Agent. The director cut her off sharply. Withdraw immediately. That's an order. After ending the call, Delgado holstered her weapon and unpinned her badge. You have about 10 minutes before they arrive. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the river access road. I can't help you beyond that. Russell gathered the evidence quickly. Why risk your career? Because I became an agent to uphold the law, not help corrupt officials destroy innocent people. She handed him a business card with a handwritten number on the back. My personal line: when you're ready to come in on legitimate terms, call me directly. As Delgado left through the front entrance, Creating a visible distraction, Russell exited through the maintenance tunnel with Pike. They reached the backup vehicle just as the first tactical units surrounded the warehouse. Nuclear option still active? Russell confirmed as Pike drove them away. Armed and ready. If you don't enter the code within 24 hours, everything drops. Russell checked his secure phone, finding a message from Charlotte. Judge Morris denied motion to maintain protective custody. New hearing scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. to determine children's placement. They were moving faster than anticipated, using the judicial system to regain control of the children before Russell could fully deploy his evidence. We need to accelerate, Russell decided. Contact Miguel. It's time for Phase 3. Phase 3 was the most aggressive counter-move in Russell's strategy. Direct confrontation with the conspirators themselves. While legal maneuvers continued through Charlotte, Russell prepared to leverage the one thing his opponents valued above all else, their public reputations. That evening, as Senator Pearson hosted a fundraising event for Walsh's exploratory committee, Pike hacked into the venue's digital systems. When the senator introduced Walsh to the gathering of wealthy donors and political supporters, the presentation screens around the ballroom suddenly changed. Instead of the campaign highlights video, the screens displayed security footage from the Lakeside Pavilion showing the attempted murder of Thomas Pearson, followed by Vanessa's recorded conversations with Walsh. The footage concluded with Thomas Pearson's deathbed testimony, naming his father and Walsh as the architects of the conspiracy. Pandemonium erupted. News cameras that had been invited to cover the political event captured the chaos as Senator Pearson and Walsh were hurried from the stage by security personnel. Within hours, the footage was trending across social media and news networks. By midnight, Charlotte reported that Judge Morris had recused himself from the custody case, and the protective custody order for the children was reinstated. The tide was turning, but Russell knew his opponents were cornered, and that made them more dangerous than ever. The final confrontation was approaching, and Russell Bennett was ready to end this war on his terms. Dawn broke with news that shocked even Russell. Overnight, Lawrence Drake had been found dead in his home, an apparent suicide with a typed note confessing to evidence tampering and corruption. The timing was too convenient. They're eliminating loose ends, Russell told Miguel. Drake knew too much and was a potential weak link. Boss, this is getting serious. If they're willing to kill a federal prosecutor... They've been serious. From the beginning, Russell interrupted. This just confirms what we're dealing with. The alleged suicide created a new complication. Drake's confession included claims that he had been manipulated by Russell, who supposedly threatened his family. It was a clumsy attempt to discredit the evidence Russell had gathered, but it was enough to create confusion in the media narrative. Russell needed to move quickly. The answer came from an unexpected source. Maria Pearson, the senator's estranged wife, requested a meeting. They met at her son Thomas's art dealer's private studio. Maria Pearson, aged gracefully into her 60s, looked every bit the dignified political spouse, but her eyes held a hardness Russell had never noticed. Thomas contacted me before he died, she said without preamble. He told me everything. About Lily. About the conspiracy. About what Dale and Walsh were planning. Yet you said nothing, Russell observed. Maria's composed expression didn't waver. I've been married to Dale Pearson for 40 years, Mr. Bennett. I learned long ago when to speak and when to prepare silently. She opened her handbag and removed a small device. This contains 40 years of insurance, recordings, financial records, correspondence. Dale never believed a woman my age would understand technology well enough to document his activities. Russell accepted the device cautiously. Why give this to me? Because Thomas trusted you with his daughter. Her voice caught slightly before. She regained control. And because Dale has forgotten the most important rule in politics, you never leave witnesses, especially not the ones who share your bed. The device contained decades of damning evidence, including recent communications discussing the Bennett problem and the need for permanent solutions. With this final piece, Russell had everything he needed. Agent Delgado agreed to meet again, this time at the FBI field office with her direct supervisor, Assistant Director Kemp. Kemp was initially skeptical, but became increasingly disturbed as Russell and Charlotte presented the comprehensive evidence. This goes beyond local corruption, Kemp concluded. We're looking at conspiracy, attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and potentially the murder of a federal prosecutor disguised as suicide. Which is why we need formal witness protection for Mr. Bennett and his children, Charlotte pressed. Kemp made several calls. After the third, he turned to Russell. Washington has authorized me to offer you a cooperation agreement. In exchange for your testimony, all local charges will be suspended and you and your children will receive witness protection. It was what Russell had been working toward, but he needed one more guarantee. I want it in writing that my custody of both children is recognized and protected, regardless of biological paternity concerns. That's not typically within our... Those are my terms, Russell stated firmly. I have evidence that could bring down half the political establishment in this state. I think that warrants some accommodation. By evening, the agreement was finalized. Russell would testify, all local charges would be suspended, and Noah and Lily would remain in his custody with federal protection. As Russell prepared to reunite with his children, news broke that District Attorney Anthony Walsh had been taken into federal custody for questioning. Hours later, Senator Pearson announced he was temporarily stepping back from public duties. The carefully constructed conspiracy was crumbling, but Russell knew it wasn't over. Vanessa remained free, still playing the role of distraught mother. The final phase of Russell's plan addressed these loose ends. Using Maria Pearson's evidence and Thomas's testimony, Charlotte filed motions to terminate Vanessa's parental rights. Simultaneously, Russell's media contacts received anonymous packages with evidence of Vanessa's active role in the conspiracy. The public narrative shifted dramatically. 3 days after entering federal protection, Russell received word that Vanessa had fled the private clinic. She won't get far, Agent Delgado assured him. Her accounts are monitored. Her passport is flagged. Russell wasn't so certain. She has her father's resources, and she's proven more calculating than anyone realized. His instincts proved correct. That night, as Russell and the children settled into their temporary protected residence, security alarms triggered. Through the feeds, Russell watched as a vehicle crashed through the gate. The driver was Vanessa. She had placed a tracking device in Noah's favorite stuffed dinosaur. Vanessa's desperate attempt to reach the children provided the final evidence needed to terminate her parental rights. When confronted with the federal case, she made one last attempt to salvage her situation, offering to testify against her father and Walsh in exchange for leniency. Let her, Russell told the federal prosecutors. She deserves whatever life she creates for herself after this. With Vanessa's cooperation, the federal case expanded rapidly. Within weeks, Senator Pearson, Anthony Walsh, and several associates were indicted on multiple charges. The man who had once looked down on Russell now faced the prospect of spending his remaining years in federal prison. 6 months passed. Russell and the children remained under protective custody, but with increasing freedoms as the immediate threat diminished. Noah, now 6, had adapted remarkably well. Lily, 8, sometimes asked difficult questions about her mother. Sometimes, people we love make bad choices, Russell explained during one such conversation, holding his daughter close. But that doesn't change how much I love you. Am I still your real daughter? Lily asked, revealing she had overheard conversations she shouldn't have. Russell looked into her eyes, Thomas's legacy, and felt the same fierce love he'd always felt for her. You have always been my daughter in every way that matters. Nothing will ever change that. While the legal proceedings continued, Russell focused on rebuilding. Phoenix Development, the contingency company he had established, thrived. Charlotte worked tirelessly to unfreeze Bennett Construction's assets. The pivotal moment came when the witness protection team determined it was safe to relocate. Russell purchased a new property, with security features disguised within its architectural design. As they settled into their new life, Russell received unexpected news from Agent Delgado. Vanessa's cooperation agreement has been revoked. She was caught attempting to warn certain targets about upcoming investigative actions. Let me guess, Russell said. She tried to protect her father? Actually, no. Delgado consulted her notes. She was communicating with Anthony Walsh through a third party. Romantic communications primarily, but also sharing details about federal strategy. It confirmed what Russell had always suspected. Vanessa's relationship with Walsh had been genuine. What happens to her now? Russell asked. She's being charged as a co-conspirator without the benefit of her cooperation agreement. The evidence from Maria Pearson's records alone is enough for a substantial sentence. And Senator Pearson? Declining a plea deal, maintaining his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. His wife's testimony has been particularly damaging. With the legal proceedings following their inevitable course, Russell focused on healing his children. He arranged for family therapy and created new routines and traditions to replace those tainted by betrayal. On Lily's 9th birthday, Russell presented her with a special gift, a small painting Thomas had created for her. Your Uncle Thomas made this for you, Russell explained. He wanted you to have it when you were older, but I think now is the right time. Lily traced the brush strokes. It feels like looking at the world after rain stops. Russell nodded, recognizing Thomas's artistic intention perfectly captured in his daughter's perception. That's exactly what he wanted to show. Beauty after storms. As the celebration continued, Russell reflected on their journey. The family wasn't perfect, but it was real and built on something stronger than his marriage had been. The following week brought a development Russell had been anticipating. Senator Pearson, facing overwhelming evidence, finally accepted a plea agreement. 25 years with no possibility of parole. Anthony Walsh quickly followed suit, accepting 18 years. Vanessa, without the benefit of a cooperation agreement, received 12 years. The legal chapter was closing, but for Russell, one important matter remained unresolved. I want to visit her, he told Charlotte. Is that wise? Charlotte looked concerned. It's not about gain, Russell explained. It's about closure. For me and, eventually, for the children. The meeting was arranged at the Federal Detention Center. Vanessa entered the visitor's room in a beige jumpsuit. I didn't expect to see you again, she said as she sat across from Russell, a thick glass partition between them. Neither did I, he acknowledged. But there are things that need to be said. How are the children? Healing. Noah asks about you sometimes. Lily less often. She always was more perceptive, Vanessa noted. Does she know about Thomas? Russell nodded. In age-appropriate terms. She knows he was her biological father, but that I am her dad in every way that matters. Vanessa's composure slipped momentarily. I never meant for her to find out. It was one mistake. This isn't about Lily's paternity, Russell interrupted. This is about understanding why. Vanessa considered the question. At first, it was my father. He never accepted you. When Anthony and I reconnected, it felt like the life I was supposed to have. So, you decided to destroy me? It wasn't supposed to go that far. Just enough evidence to give me leverage in a divorce. Then things escalated. My father and Anthony saw an opportunity. And Thomas? Pain flickered across Vanessa's features. I didn't know they would. I never wanted Thomas hurt. When I heard what happened, I tried to back out, but it was too late. Russell didn't know whether to believe her. It didn't matter anymore. I came to tell you that despite everything, the children will be okay. I'll make sure of it. And when they're old enough to understand, I won't poison them against you. The truth will be enough. Vanessa's mask cracked completely. I did love you once, Russell. Before ambition and resentment corrupted everything. I know, he acknowledged. That's what makes all of this tragic rather than merely criminal. As Russell stood to leave, Vanessa pressed her palm against the glass. Will you bring them to visit eventually? That will be their choice when they're older. I won't keep them from you, but I won't force them either. Vanessa nodded, accepting the fairness of his position. You're a better parent than I ever was. I see that now. Goodbye, Vanessa, Russell said, with a finality that closed 15 years of shared history. As he walked out into the bright sunlight, a weight lifted. The conversation hadn't been about forgiveness. Some betrayals went too deep for that. It had been about recognizing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Russell Bennett had survived the conspiracy to destroy him. He had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to protect what truly mattered. The war was over. Now came the peace. 5 years passed, Russell's business empire had not only recovered but expanded. Noah, now 11, was a confident boy who excelled at team sports. Lily, 14, showed remarkable artistic talent, her paintings already winning regional competitions. The 5th anniversary of what the family now called the upheaval found Russell in his home office, reviewing plans for Phoenix Development's most ambitious project yet. Miguel entered with architectural renderings for the centerpiece, a community art center that would bear Thomas Pearson's name. "The Thomas Pearson Center for the Arts," Miguel read from the proposed dedication plaque. "Perfect tribute, boss." "He deserved better than what happened to him," Russell said. "This ensures he's remembered for his talent, not his family's corruption." As they reviewed the details, Russell's secure phone signaled an incoming call from Agent Delgado, now promoted to assistant director. "Bennett," he answered, still using the crisp, professional tone reserved for official contacts. "Mr. Bennett, I thought you should hear this directly from me," Delgado began. "Anthony Walsh was found dead in his cell this morning. Apparent suicide, though we're investigating thoroughly." Russell absorbed this without immediate reaction. Walsh's death meant little to him personally. Justice had already been served through his imprisonment. That evening, during dinner with the children, Russell shared the news about Walsh in simple, age-appropriate terms. Noah absorbed it quietly, while Lily asked more probing questions. "Does this change anything for us?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," Russell assured her. "Our life continues exactly as we've built it. This is just the closing of an old chapter." Later, after the children were in bed, Russell sat on the back deck with Miguel, 2 glasses of bourbon in hand. "5 years," Miguel remarked. "Sometimes it feels like another lifetime." Russell nodded, watching the sunset cast long shadows. "I was thinking about success today, what it really means. And what conclusion did you reach?" Russell gestured toward the house behind them. "This. Not the business or the money. Building something that survives betrayal and stands stronger for having been tested." Miguel raised his glass. "To building things that last." Russell returned the toast. "To legacy." 3 months later, Russell received a letter from Vanessa. The prison censor stamp marked the envelope, but the contents were unexpectedly personal. "Russell," she wrote, "news of Anthony's death reached me last week. It prompted reflection on the choices that led all of us to where we are now. I find myself wondering what might have been if ambition and resentment hadn't poisoned what we built together. Noah's visits have been a gift I don't deserve. He's becoming an extraordinary young man, your influence evident in his character and strength. Please tell Lily I understand her distance and respect her boundaries." The painting she sent last Christmas hangs in my cell, a reminder of beauty beyond these walls. I have no right to ask anything of you, but I hope that when my sentence ends, there might be some path toward a different kind of relationship with our children. Not as their primary parent, that role is irrevocably yours, but as someone who has learned the hardest possible lessons about loyalty and consequences. You once told me you wouldn't poison them against me, that the truth would be enough. You've kept that promise, allowing them to form their own judgments. It's more mercy than I would have shown in your position. There was a time when I believed power and status were the measures of a life well lived. I know differently now. True strength lies in building rather than destroying, in protecting rather than exploiting. All qualities you possess that I was too blind to value. I don't expect forgiveness, nor would I presume to ask for it. Some betrayals are beyond redemption, but I am grateful for the dignity you've maintained throughout this ordeal, especially regarding the children. Vanessa. Russell folded the letter carefully after reading it twice. There was nothing to respond to. He placed it in his office safe, potentially to share with the children when they were older. 6 weeks later, Russell stood on the construction site of the Thomas Pearson Center for the Arts, watching as crews installed the distinctive curved steel beams. Lily stood beside him, her artistic eye evaluating the emerging structure. "It captures something essential about his work," she observed, referencing the uncle she had come to know through his art. "The way light will move through the space, throughout the day. It's what he always tried to achieve." Russell nodded. "Your insight would have meant a lot to him." Do you think he'd be proud of the center? And of me? The question revealed the vulnerability beneath her confidence. Russell put his arm around her shoulders. Without question, your talent would have amazed him, but more importantly, he would be proud of your resilience and heart. As they continued their tour, Russell's phone buzzed with a notification. The final appeal in Vanessa's case had been denied. Her sentence would continue as scheduled. Russell pocketed the phone without comment. That information could wait. Today was about building, not past destruction. It was about Lily's connection to her artistic legacy, about the community that would benefit from the space for generations. The conspiracy that had nearly destroyed Russell Bennett had ultimately failed. Not only had he survived, but he had emerged stronger and more determined to protect what truly mattered. The foundation of that legacy wasn't wealth or power. It was integrity, resilience, and the unwavering determination to protect what he valued most. As Russell and Lily walked back to the car, Noah called from school, excited about scoring the winning point in his basketball game. The ordinary miracle of a child's joy, preserved despite extraordinary circumstances, was the achievement Russell valued above all others. He had faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged not just alive, but triumphant. His enemies had lost everything. He had kept what was irreplaceable. That was a victory worth building a life upon.